CPO eLab, eLab interface orders. Prognosis supports two versions of eLab interfaces. The unidirectional interface is results only. Bidirectional interface consists of the results as well as the orders, and that is the topic of this video. Results are covered in a separate video. Now, the benefit of an eLab order is that instead of a paper requisition, you can send the order directly to the lab from within EMR. And this is whether or not the specimen is actually collected in your office or if the patient goes to the patient service center to have the specimen drawn. Now, it does require vendor-specific setup. Existing vendors such as LabCorp or Quest Diagnostic or BioReference Lab typically takes about a 6 to a 12-week timeline, give or take. For new vendors, there may be a 3 to 6 month duration or even more, and at first would require our interface services group to determine feasibility by speaking directly with the vendor to get all of the required specifications for the interface. We do support an unlimited number of vendors as long as they are compatible with the HL7 transaction. The settings and configuration consists of the vendor master. That's going to have some different settings such as bill type, specimen collection source, and things of that nature. The insurance master, each vendor will have their own carrier code so that when the insurance is responsible for the laboratory service, that can be included with your order. And finally, most vendors will have their own specific test compendium, and in some cases at a test level, they may require additional information known as an AOE or ask on order entry. For instance, with LabCorp, there are some custom specialty templates included in your library based on certain tests, such as cytology or lead poisoning, that they require you to submit additional data. Same thing with Quest, only with Quest, instead of having specialty templates, there is just a text entry button that you enter the data. Also, an ABN when applicable based on the type of test and diagnoses. The vendor will require that you print the ABN, have the patient sign it, and then also include that with your e-order. So we are going to see all of these in our demonstration. So we're going to just toggle into prognosis. I've already logged in here as my medical assistant, Connor. I've opened up Jane Rizzoli's chart, and we're just going to go straight to the lab order screen. Now, we already discussed the anatomy of this screen and the process of entering a lab order, as well as ordering and printing a lab requisition in our lab orders overview video. So we're not going to go into those details here. We're just going to go ahead, however, and choose our eLab vendor. In this first example, I'm going to choose LabCorp, and we're just going to go ahead and order a couple of simple tests, and I'm going to save it. Now, I do want to mention that here in the vendor section, where we have our bill type, our account number, and our sample drop-downs, these are mandatory for eLab. They should default based on your vendor setup, but if for whatever reason, for instance, the account number cannot be isolated to the specific physician location combination based on how your interface was credentialed, then you may have to, at the individual order level, come in and choose the account number for the ordering provider on the requisition. These are not required when you're just printing the requisition, but with regards to LabCorp, typically you're going to indicate if it's a third-party responsibility so that the insurance information gets sent right along with the other details. In our example, since we ordered an AFP test, this is part of the additional AOE with LabCorp. Now with LabCorp, the ask on order entry additional information is handled through a series of specialty templates. These templates can be completed either before or after the actual data entry of the test, as long as it accompanies the test when you click the eSend icon. We're going to go over here to our specialty template. And for those of you who are using LabCorp, you will have these additional templates that are prefixed with LabCorp. And these are going to be contingent upon the specific test you're ordering. Not every test ordered through the interface is going to require this additional data, and that information is determined by LabCorp, not Prognosis. If I go back to my lab order screen, again, I could have done that template first and then come in here and completed it. If I want to assign my diagnoses, I of course have my different options, whether it's going to be a singular ICD or multiple ICD. Local workflow will dictate whether you're going to enter your collection data. I'm going to go ahead and save. And now the only difference than what we saw in our earlier videos is on our action icons, instead of printing or faxing, we're going to click our eLab or our eSend icon. When it is successful, we will get this confirmation message. And then if you notice in the upper left, our status has changed from approved to ordered, and in parentheses, it says eSend. Now, as mentioned earlier, the benefit of the eLab is that you don't need to print a paper requisition, but if for whatever reason you do want to print a copy of the lab order, I'm going to go into the preview option just to show you the different templates. And this, of course, is covered in the printing lab order video in more detail. But because LabCorp has these additional ask on order entry templates, you'll notice that even the printed output templates, there are multiple. So with regards to the AFP, as we just saw in our example here, the cytology related, and even with their standard requisition, they have different formats as to whether you're collecting the specimen in-house or if the patient is going to follow up live in the patient service center. So even if you are going to send the order eLab, you do have the ability of coming in and choosing the applicable template and sending it to your printer to print the hard copy. Now we're going to take a look at an example with Quest Diagnostics. Now the filling out of the lab order itself is no different than what we've already seen. The difference with Quest, however, is with regards to the AOE, or the Ask on Order entry, as opposed to the LabCorp example where we saw specialty templates. With Quest, it is going to be built in right here in the lab order screen by means of a pop-up. I've opened up my test patient here again of Jane Rizzoli, but this time I've chosen Quest Diagnostics. I'm just going to go ahead and order a couple of tests that will require the additional data as determined by Quest, as well as an ABN. We did not see the example of an ABN back with LabCorp, so we're going to look at it here with Quest. It, of course, is applicable to any vendor that would require the ABN. Now, once I save the order with Quest as my vendor, if we notice here in the vendor header section, I have a button called Required Data. We did not see that in our LabCorp example. This is where the AOE is going to be entered. Now, if I fail to notice that and I go ahead and click the eSend button, the system is going to prompt me that it is not recommended to send this until I have filled in the additional information. So at this point, I can go ahead and click the Yes button, and it will bring me the pop-up so that I can enter whatever information Quest wants. I could have also opened this pop-up directly simply by clicking on the Required Data button. So for instance, here in the example of the urine culture, they want to know the source of the specimen. So I'm just going to go ahead and put that patient gave urine in office, and that will get transmitted electronically right along with the test. Now that I've entered that information, I can click my eLab icon, and it tells me that it has been successfully generated on eSend. Now, because I did not enter any diagnoses on this example, it did not prompt me for the ABN. The criteria that will require an advanced beneficiary notification is going to be 1, the patient must have Medicare insurance with a claim filing indicator of Medicare A or B. Also, the test and the diagnosis combination must be one that Medicare states requires an ABN. So we're going to look at that example now. I'm going to go ahead and create the same test again, but this time I'm going to enter the diagnoses on my test. And again, with the diagnoses, you have the ability of doing singular or multiple, depending on what the requirement is for the vendor. Now, if you notice down here in the lower right, this time our ABN button is lit up. And when I try to eSend it it is going to prompt me to print the ABN. Once I print the ABN, notice that now my ABN button has a check mark. This will enable me to go ahead now and complete the order electronically, including the advanced beneficiary notice. Notice that our status does update as ordered eSent. The last thing here then, since we're still on our Quest order, is the paper requisition. Now again, being an electronic lab order, you do not need to print the requisition, but if you want to, just as we saw in our LabCorp example earlier, I'm going to click the preview example, and unlike LabCorp where the templates were based on the tests requiring the AOE data, the Quest templates are triggered off of the bill type. For instance, we see here C, meaning bill type client, P for bill type patient, or T for bill type third party. So if you did want to print a requisition that included the insurance information versus the patient information or your own internal information, you would choose the appropriate requisition. That, of course, is entirely optional based on your local workflow. So in review, eLab interface is available both as unidirectional and bidirectional, but as we discussed in this video, bidirectional is the one that includes the orders. Unidirectional, which is results only, is discussed in a separate video. With regards to the eLab interface, there are vendor-specific setup and configuration required, such as the vendor master, the insurance master, and your lab test masters. For existing labs, such as LabCorp or Quest, it's a typical 6 to 12-week timeline. We do interface with any vendor in the nation that provides an HL7 transaction record. For new vendors that we have not yet gone live with, however, there could be a 3 to 6 month or greater timeline to establish the vendor feasibility and then to get the interface up and running. Some vendors have ask on order entry requirements based at the specific test level. This is handled, for instance, for LabCorp by means of specialty templates where you can enter the additional data required for the applicable tests. And with Quest, we provide a pop-up button called Required Data right in the middle of ordering the test. When an ABN or an advanced beneficiary notice is applicable based on the test and ICD combination, you will be able to auto-generate it directly from the lab order screen, and then once it has been signed by the patient, it will be included with the eLab order once you transmit it successfully. And finally, even though eLab goes electronically directly from EMR to the vendor, you do still have the ability of printing out a physical requisition based on bill type. That concludes this video within the series. Please click the appropriate link below for your next step. If you'd like to take a quiz, you will receive your results in real time directly on the screen so that you can see how well you've done. If you answer incorrectly, the system will prompt you with the correct response. In addition, a confidential email will be sent to the education team to help us better serve you with our educational offerings. Second, advance to the next video within the series you're currently in. And finally, return to the video library main page. As always, feel free to contact us through the Resource Center or email with any additional questions or comments.